The banging on the door cut through the howling blizzard like a gunshot. Luke stood frozen in his small wooden cabin, gripping a metal rod with white knuckles. Through the frosted window he saw her. A woman collapsed against the frame, covered in snow, barely standing. Her voice came weak and desperate. "Please, just let me inside for a moment." Luke's hand trembled on the doorknob. 1 year ago he had opened this door. A man with kind eyes and a broken-down car had stepped inside, accepted coffee, warmed himself by the fire. 3 hours later, while Luke was in the bathroom, the man had vanished, taking his mother's wedding ring, the $340 hidden in a coffee tin, and his father's pocket watch. Everything of value gone. Luke had stood in the empty cabin that night, staring at the open door, feeling something inside him crack and harden at the same time. He had sworn never again. Never trust. Never help. Never open this door to a stranger. Lily's small voice came from the bedroom doorway. "Daddy, someone's outside." Luke didn't turn. His 7-year-old daughter stood there in worn pajamas, clutching a stuffed rabbit against her chest. Her eyes were wide and glassy with sleep. The woman outside coughed violently, a raw sound that seemed to tear something apart from the inside on. Then nothing, just the wind screaming through the trees and the rattle of snow against the cabin walls. Luke had built this life carefully. After Sarah left 3 years ago, unable to bear the poverty, the isolation, the endless Montana winters, he and Lily had learned to survive on almost nothing. He worked odd jobs in town when he could find them, chopping wood, fixing fences, anything that paid enough to keep the heat on and food in Lily's stomach. The cabin was small and drafty, but it was theirs, safe, isolated. No one came up this far into the mountains unless they were lost or running. Lily crept closer, standing just behind him now. "Daddy, she's not moving." Luke wiped the frost away from the window with his sleeve. The woman was slumped against the doorframe, her head tilted to one side. Snow had piled on her shoulders and hair. Her lips were blue. Luke looked down at his daughter. Lily's face was pale and worried. She had seen too much hardship for a 7-year-old. Too many nights when dinner was just bread and broth. Too many times when he told her they had to be careful, had to stay quiet, had to keep to themselves. But she still had kindness in her. She hadn't learned to be afraid yet. 3 seconds. That's how long Luke had to choose. Fear or compassion? Protect his daughter or save a stranger? The metal rod felt heavy in his hand. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is open a door. But sometimes the most dangerous thing is keeping it closed. Luke set the metal rod down and unlocked the door. The cold hit him like a fist. The woman collapsed forward into his arms, her body limp and freezing. She was heavier than she looked. Dead weight against his chest, Luke dragged her inside and kicked the door shut behind him. Snow swirled across the floor. His voice came sharp and urgent. "Get the blankets from my bed." Lily ran. Luke laid the woman down near the wood stove, the only source of heat in the cabin. Her coat was soaked through, ice crystals forming along the seams. Her hands trembled uncontrollably. He pulled off her gloves. Her fingers were white at the tips. Frostbite. Not severe yet, but close. Lily returned with 2 thick blankets. Together they wrapped the woman up, tucking the edges around her shoulders and legs. Luke built up the fire until the heat roared against his face. He filled a pot with water and set it on the stove to boil. The woman's eyes fluttered open, dark and unfocused. Her voice came out hoarse. "Where am I?" Luke kept his tone flat. "You're safe, that's all I can tell you." When she tried to sit up, but her body wouldn't cooperate, she fell back against the blankets, shivering so violently her teeth clattered together. Luke's words came firm. "Don't move. You need to warm up slowly." Lily knelt beside the woman, staring at her with open curiosity. "What's your name?" The woman's eyes shifted toward the girl. For a moment, she didn't answer. Then she whispered, "Emma, I'm Emma." Lily's face brightened. "I'm Lily. This is my dad. He's really good at fixing things." Emma's gaze moved to Luke. He could see the fever burning in her eyes now, bright and dangerous. Her voice barely reached him. "Thank you." Luke didn't respond. He took the boiling water and poured it into a mug, adding the last tea bag from the cupboard. He handed it to Emma. She wrapped her shaking hands around the mug and held it close to her face, breathing in the steam. Luke crossed his arms. What were you doing out there? Emma blinked slowly as if trying to remember. I was skiing, backcountry, near the ridge. I fell, twisted my ankle. My phone died. I tried to find my way back, but I got lost. I saw your light. Luke's voice stayed flat. You're lucky you didn't freeze to death. Emma's words came soft. I know. Lily tugged on Luke's sleeve, her eyes hopeful. Can she stay, Daddy? Luke looked down at his daughter, then at the window. The storm outside wasn't letting up. If anything, it had grown worse. The wind howled louder now, and the snow was coming down so thick he could barely see the trees beyond the glass. He thought about making Emma leave, about protecting what little he had left, but the temperature outside would kill her in minutes. His voice came reluctant. You'll stay the night, that's all. Emma nodded weakly. That's all I need. But when morning came, the storm had not stopped. The cabin was buried under 2 feet of snow. The road leading down the mountain was completely blocked. Luke stood at the window, staring out at the wall of white, and realized they were trapped. Emma woke on the floor near the stove, still wrapped in blankets. Her fever had broken overnight, but she looked exhausted. She sat up slowly, wincing. Luke was at the stove, frying eggs, 3 eggs, the last ones they had. How do you feel? Emma's voice came stronger now. Better, thank you. She looked around the cabin for the first time, taking it in. The cracked wooden walls, the single couch with a torn cushion, the small table with mismatched chairs. Her eyes lingered on the details without judgment, just observation. Luke divided the eggs onto 2 plates, one for Lily, one for Emma. He didn't take any for himself. Emma watched him carefully. You need to eat too. His response came short. I'm fine. Emma looked at the plate in front of her, then at Lily, who was eating quietly at the table. She picked up her fork but didn't eat. Instead, she watched Luke with an expression he couldn't read. The day passed slowly. The storm raged. Emma stayed near the fire, her strength returning gradually. Lily sat beside her and talked about school, about her friends, about the stories her father read to her at night. Emma listened with genuine attention, asking questions that made Lily smile. Luke watched from across the room. He didn't trust Emma yet, but he could see that Lily liked her, and Lily didn't like people easily. That evening, Emma insisted on helping. She found flour and salt in the cupboard and made bread, just water and heat, nothing fancy. But when it came out of the makeshift oven, it smelled like something Luke hadn't smelled in years. Like home. Lily tore into the warm bread with her hands, grinning. This is so good. Emma smiled, a genuine warmth spreading across her face. My grandmother taught me. She used to say you can make something out of nothing if you know how to look. Luke took a piece. It was dense and slightly burnt on the edges, but it was real food. He chewed slowly, watching Emma as she sat beside Lily at the table. She looked different now, less like a stranger and more like someone who belonged there. It unsettled him. That night, after Lily had gone to bed, Luke sat by the fire with Emma. The cabin was quiet except for the crackle of burning wood. The wind outside had finally started to die down. Emma's voice came soft. Thank you for letting me stay. Luke didn't look at her. You would have died out there. Her response came quick. I know, but you still made a choice. He turned to her. A year ago, I let someone in. A man. He robbed me, took everything I had that mattered. Emma's face softened. I'm sorry. Luke stared into the fire. I told myself I wouldn't do it again, wouldn't help anyone, wouldn't trust anyone. Emma leaned back against the wall. But you did. His voice came quiet. I don't know why. Emma's words carried weight. Maybe because you're still a good person, even after everything. Luke didn't respond. He had spent the last year building walls around himself and Lily, keeping the world out. And now, in one night, this woman had walked through those walls like they were nothing. There was a long silence, comfortable but heavy. Emma finally spoke again. Sometimes we build walls to protect ourselves, but those walls end up making us prisoners. Luke looked at her, really looked at her. She wasn't just talking about him, she was talking about herself too. Her eyes held something he recognized. Isolation, loneliness, the weight of carrying too much alone. His question came direct. Who are you? Really? Emma smiled faintly. Just someone who got lost in the snow. Luke knew she was lying, not about the snow, about everything else. But he didn't press, because part of him didn't want to know. Because when he knew, she would become real. And when she became real, she could leave and take this feeling with her. Emma's voice turned thoughtful. You have a beautiful daughter. She's kind, she's curious, she's everything good in the world. You've done well, raising her alone. Luke looked away. I do what I have to. Emma's response came gentle. That's more than most people can say. They sat in silence for a while longer. The fire crackled. The wind outside had gone quiet. For the first time in days, the cabin felt almost warm. Luke's words came unexpected, even to himself. Thank you for being kind to her. To Lily. She doesn't get that often. Emma's expression softened further. She deserves it. Luke nodded. He didn't say anything else, but something inside him shifted. The wall he had built around himself, the one that had kept everyone out for the past year, had developed a crack, and Emma had walked right through it. The next morning, the storm was over. The sky was clear and blue, and the sun reflected off the snow so brightly it hurt to look at. Luke went outside and started digging a path to the road. It took hours. His back ached and his hands were numb, but he kept going. Emma came out to help. She didn't have gloves, so Luke gave her his spare pair. Together they worked in silence, shoveling snow until the path was clear. The work was hard, but there was something comfortable about it. Two people working side by side, no words needed. By the afternoon, the road was passable. Emma stood at the edge of the property, looking down the mountain. Her face was unreadable. Her voice came quiet. I should go. Luke nodded. You should. But neither of them moved. The air between them felt thick, weighted with things unsaid. Luke wanted to tell her to stay. The words were right there, pushing against his throat. But fear held them back. Fear of being hurt again. Fear of letting someone in only to watch them leave. Lily came running out of the cabin, still in her coat and boots. Are you leaving? Emma knelt down and pulled Lily into a hug, holding her tight. I have to, sweetheart. But I'll never forget you. Lily's eyes filled with tears. Can't you stay? Emma looked up at Luke. Her eyes held a silent question, a plea. Tell me to stay. Just say the words. Luke's jaw tightened. He couldn't speak. The silence stretched between them, painful and final. Emma stood and brushed the snow off her coat. Take care of your dad, okay? He's a good man. Lily nodded, wiping her eyes. Emma turned to Luke. Thank you for everything. Luke wanted to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. He just nodded. Emma started walking down the road. Luke and Lily stood in the driveway and watched her go. She looked back once, just before she disappeared around the bend. Her eyes met Luke's for one long second. Then she was gone. Lily tugged on Luke's hand. Why didn't you ask her to stay? Luke looked down at his daughter. Because she doesn't belong here. But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't true. That night, the cabin felt emptier than it ever had before. Lily went to bed early, crying softly into her pillow. Luke sat by the fire alone, staring at the flames. He thought about Emma's smile, the way she had read to Lily, the way she had made soup out of nothing. He thought about the crack in his wall, and he realized too late that he had let her in. I built walls to keep the world out. But walls don't just keep danger away, they keep life away too. The days that followed were brutal. Luke went back to town looking for work, but there was nothing. The winter had been hard on everyone. Businesses were cutting back. People were barely surviving. He spent 2 days knocking on doors, asking for anything, and came home with nothing. The bills piled up. The electricity bill, $180 overdue. The water bill, $95 final notice. The property tax he had been avoiding 4 months, $1,200, must pay or face foreclosure. He opened each envelope with shaking hands and stared at the numbers. They were impossible. He sold what little he had left. An old radio, $15. A set of tools, $45. His father's pocket knife, the one he had been using to carve Lily's toy horse, $80. He took them into town and traded them for cash. It wasn't enough. 2 weeks after Emma left, the power went out. Luke called the electric company. They told him his account was overdue. They told him he needed to pay $180 to turn it back on. He didn't have $180. He didn't have 50. He hung up the phone and stood in the dark cabin, listening to Lily cry in the next room. That night, they ate the last of the bread. Luke gave Lily his portion. She didn't notice. She was too tired, too cold. She fell asleep at the table and Luke carried her to bed. He tucked her in and sat beside her, watching her breathe. He thought about Emma. He thought about the warmth she had brought into this place, and he hated himself for letting her leave. The next morning, Luke walked into town and applied for a loan. The bank turned him down. He had no collateral, no steady income, no credit. He walked out of the building and stood on the sidewalk, staring at the mountains in the distance. He had nothing left. That night, Lily found his old cell phone in a drawer. She turned it on and scrolled through the contacts. There was only one number she didn't recognize, a number Emma had written on a piece of paper and tucked into the phone case before she left, just in case. Lily pressed call. Emma answered on the second ring. Hello? Lily's voice was small. Hi, Emma. It's me, Lily. There was a long silence on the other end. Then Emma's voice came urgent. Lily, sweetheart, is everything okay? Lily started crying. No, everything's bad. Daddy lost his job. We don't have any food. The power's off. He won't tell me, but I know he's scared. I heard him crying last night. He thought I was asleep, but I wasn't. Emma's voice tightened. Where's your dad right now? Lily wiped her nose. Outside chopping wood. It's dark, but he's still out there because we're almost out of firewood. Emma's question came quick. Does he know you're calling me? Lily's voice dropped to a whisper. No, did I do something wrong? Emma's response came firm and reassuring. No, sweetheart, you did exactly right. Listen to me. Everything's going to be okay. I promise. Can you trust me? Lily sniffled. I trust you. Emma's voice softened. Good. Now go be with your dad. Don't tell him about this call yet. I'll take care of the rest. Well, Lily hesitated. What are you going to do? Emma's words carried certainty. What I should have done a long time ago. The call ended. Lily put the phone back in the drawer, her hands still shaking. She didn't know if she had done the right thing, but she ran outside and found Luke by the woodpile, swinging the axe with slow, exhausted movements. She wrapped her arms around his waist and held him tight. Luke dropped the axe and hugged her back. It's going to be okay. But he didn't believe it. That evening, Luke's phone rang. He almost didn't answer. He didn't recognize the number. But something made him pick it up. The voice on the other end stopped his breath. Luke, it's Emma. He sat down heavily on the couch. His hands were shaking. Emma, how did you... Her words came gentle but direct. Lily called me. I need to talk to you. Luke closed his eyes. She what? Emma's voice stayed steady. She told me what's been happening. Luke, why didn't you reach out? His response came defensive. Because I couldn't. Emma pushed. Why not? Luke's voice cracked. Because I didn't want you to see me like this. I didn't want you to know that I'm failing, that I can't even keep the lights on for my daughter. There was a pause on the line. Then Emma's voice came soft. You're not failing, you're surviving. There's a difference, Refties. Luke's laugh came bitter. It doesn't feel like it. Emma took a breath and Luke could hear the weight in it. I know, but I'm going to help you. And before I do, I need to tell you something I should have said from the beginning. Luke frowned. What are you talking about? Emma's next words changed everything. I lied to you, Luke, about who I am. Luke's stomach dropped. What? Emma's voice trembled slightly. I'm not just some woman who got lost in the snow. I'm the CEO of Sullivan Industries. We do tech infrastructure, data centers, cloud systems, fiber optics, 800 million in revenue last year. I have more money than I know what to do with. The silence stretched between them, heavy and painful. Emma continued, her words tumbling out. And I spent 3 days in your cabin pretending to be someone I'm not, because for the first time in years, I felt like a real person. Do you know what it's like when everyone only sees money, when every conversation is about deals and stock prices and board meetings, when you don't know if someone cares about you or just what you can give them. Luke couldn't speak. He felt like the ground had disappeared beneath him. Emma's voice broke. In that cabin, you and Lily treated me like a person, not a CEO, not money, just Emma. And I needed that more than I can explain. Luke found his voice and it came out cold. You lied to me. Emma's response came quick. I know. Luke stood up, anger rising. For 3 days, you sat in my house, ate my food, the last food we had, played with my daughter, and you lied. Emma's voice cracked. I'm sorry. Oh. Luke cut her off. Sorry, do you have any idea what I've been through? What it took for me to let you in? I was robbed, betrayed. I swore I'd never trust anyone again. And I broke that promise for you. And the whole time you were lying? Emma was crying now. It wasn't all a lie. Everything I felt in that cabin was real. Everything I said to Lily was real. The way I felt about you was real. The only thing I lied about was my name and my job. The rest was me. The real me. Luke's anger warred with something else. Something he didn't want to name. Part of him wanted to hang up, to never speak to her again. But another part remembered the warmth in her eyes, the gentleness in her voice when she read to Lily, the way she had made him feel less alone. Emma's voice came urgent. I'm coming back. Tomorrow I'm bringing food and I'm paying your bills and I'm going to fix this. Why? Luke's pride flared. I don't want your money. Emma's response came firm. I don't care. You need help. Lily needs help. And I'm going to give it whether you like it or not. And Luke, I have a job for you at my company. Project coordinator, $60,000 a year. Benefits, health insurance. You don't have to answer now, but think about it. For Lily. Luke stood in the dark cabin, the phone pressed to his ear, his world tilting on its axis. Everything he thought he knew had just shattered. Emma's final words came soft. I know you're angry. You have every right to be, but I'm not going anywhere. Not this time. Luke hung up without responding. He sat in the darkness, his hands shaking, feeling like he had been punched in the chest. Emma, the woman he had started to care about, was a billionaire. She had lied to him, and now she was offering to save him. Sometimes the person who saves you is also the person who breaks you, and you have to decide which one matters more. He didn't know which scared him more, accepting her help or rejecting it, because both choices meant something he wasn't ready to face, that he cared about her, that somewhere in those 3 days she had become more than a stranger. She had become someone who mattered, and that terrified him. Word count, 4,421. Target, 6,800 to 7,000. Status, continuing. The next morning arrived cold and gray. Luke woke before dawn, having barely slept. He made coffee from the last of the grounds, weak and bitter, and sat at the table staring at his phone. Emma had said she was coming today. He didn't know if he wanted her to or not. Lily woke up and came to the table, rubbing her eyes. Is Emma really coming back? Luke looked at his daughter. She said she was. Lily's face brightened. That's good, right? Luke didn't answer. He wasn't sure what it was. Around mid-morning, Luke heard the sound of an engine. He went to the window and saw a black Mercedes SUV pulling up the road. Expensive, gleaming, completely out of place against the snow-covered pines. The vehicle probably cost more than Luke had made in the last 5 years combined. Emma stepped out, and Luke's breath caught. She looked nothing like the woman who had collapsed at his door 2 weeks ago. She wore a cream-colored parka that screamed designer label, black pants that fit perfectly, and boots that were both practical and clearly expensive. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail, and even from a distance, Luke could see she carried herself differently. Confident, composed, powerful. This was Emma Sullivan, ECO, not Emma, the lost woman who had made bread in his kitchen. Lily ran outside before Luke could stop her. Emma! Emma's face transformed the moment she saw Lily. The professional mask dropped, replaced by genuine warmth. She caught Lily in a hug and lifted her off the ground, spinning her once. My sweet girl, I missed you so much. Lily clung to her. I missed you too. Are you really going to help us? Emma set her down gently. I'm really going to help, I promise. Luke stepped out onto the porch, arms crossed. Emma looked up and their eyes met. Something passed between them. Complicated, weighted, unresolved. Emma's voice came softer. Luke. He nodded, not trusting his voice. Emma walked to the SUV and opened the back. She started pulling out grocery bags. 6 of them, all full. Luke watched as she carried them to the porch. Fresh bread, vegetables, chicken, eggs, milk, pasta, sauce, cheese, fruit, coffee, cereal. More food than the cabin had seen in months. She set the bags down and turned to face him. I'm sorry, I know you're angry. You have every right to be, but I'm here now and I want to help. Luke's jaw tightened. Why? Emma met his gaze steadily. Because you saved my life. Because you and Lily gave me something I didn't know I needed. And because I care about you. Luke looked away. You don't even know me. Emma's response came quick. I know enough. I know you're a good man, a good father, and you deserve better than this. Luke wanted to argue, wanted to send her away, but he thought about Lily inside, about the empty refrigerator, about the bills piled on the table. Pride was a luxury he couldn't afford anymore. Emma reached into her coat and pulled out an envelope. This is a check, $15,000. It's enough to cover your bills for 6 months, pay off your debts, give you breathing room. Luke stared at the envelope like it was a snake. That's charity. Emma shook her head. It's not charity. It's paying a debt. You gave me shelter when I needed it. You asked for nothing in return. This is me returning the favor. Luke's hands clenched at his sides. I gave you a roof and some food. That's not worth $15,000. Emma's voice turned fierce. You gave me 3 days of being human again. Of feeling like someone cared about me as a person, not as a bank account. That's worth more than $15,000. That's priceless. They stood there, the cold air between them, neither willing to back down. Lily appeared in the doorway. Daddy, please, just take it. I'm tired of being cold. I'm tired of being hungry. I'm tired of seeing you sad. Luke looked at his daughter and something inside him broke. She was 7 years old. She shouldn't have to worry about these things. She shouldn't have to see him like this. He reached out and took the envelope. The paper felt heavy in his hand. This doesn't mean I forgive you. Emma's voice came gentle. I know. She pulled out another piece of paper. And there's this, a job offer, project coordinator at Sullivan Industries, $60,000 a year, full benefits, health insurance, retirement plan. You'd start next Monday if you accept. Luke unfolded the paper and scanned it. The salary alone was more than he'd made in any year of his life. The benefits were beyond anything he'd imagined. It felt impossible. His voice came rough. I don't belong in your world. Emma stepped closer. Maybe not yet, but you will. You're smart, Luke. You're resourceful. You've survived things that would have broken other people. Those are the skills I need, not degrees, not credentials. Skills. Luke looked at the paper again, then at Emma. Why are you really doing this? Emma's eyes held his. Because in that cabin, I saw who you really are. And I believe in you, even if you don't believe in yourself yet. Luke didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. Emma hugged Lily goodbye, promised to be in touch about the home, and drove away. Luke stood in the driveway with the envelope in his hand and a knot in his chest that wouldn't go away. That evening, after the groceries were put away and Lily was asleep with a full stomach for the first time in weeks, Luke sat at the table and opened the envelope. The check inside was real, $15,000 made out to him, signed in Emma's neat handwriting. He stared at it for a long time. Part of him wanted to tear it up, to prove he didn't need her help. But the smarter part, the part that thought about Lily shivering under blankets in the dark, knew he had to cash it. 3 days later, Luke walked into the bank and deposited the check. He watched the teller process it, watched the numbers appear in his account. $15,000, more than he'd seen in 5 years. He paid the electric bill first, then the water bill, then the property tax. He bought groceries, real groceries, with meat and vegetables and fresh fruit. He filled up his truck's gas tank for the first time in months. And for the first time in a long time, He could breathe without the weight of impossible debt crushing his chest. But the relief came with the moment. Every time he spent Emma's money, he felt like he was selling a piece of himself. Every dollar was a reminder that he couldn't provide for his daughter on his own, that he had needed saving. There's a difference between not knowing something and being unable to learn it. Not knowing is temporary. Unable is permanent. I'm not permanent. Luke looked at the job offer every day for a week. He read it over and over, trying to imagine himself in an office, working with computers, coordinating projects. It seemed like a fantasy, like pretending to be someone he wasn't. But then he thought about Lily, about giving her a real home with heat and food and maybe even new clothes, about sending her to a good school, about not having to choose between electricity and groceries. 2 weeks after Emma's visit, Luke picked up the phone and called the number on the job offer. Emma answered on the first ring. Luke, his voice came uncertain. I want to take the ball if it's still available. Emma's relief was audible. It's still available. When can you start? Luke took a breath. Monday. Emma's smile came through the phone. Monday is perfect. I'll have everything ready for you. After he hung up, Luke sat in the cabin and looked around, at the cracked walls and the worn furniture and the wood stove that barely kept them warm. This had been his life for 3 years, survival, struggle, isolation. And now he was about to step into a completely different world. He didn't know if he was ready, but he knew he had to try, for Lily, and maybe, just maybe, for himself. Monday morning arrived too fast. Luke woke at 4:30, unable to sleep. He showered in the small bathroom, the water lukewarm because he was still rationing propane. He dressed in the thrift store suit, gray, cheap fabric, sleeves that stopped half an inch short of his wrists. The tie felt like a noose around his neck. He had watched a YouTube video 3 times to learn how to tie it properly. Lily was still asleep when he left. He kissed her forehead and whispered that Mrs. Chen from down the mountain would check on her after school. The drive to Portland took 3 hours through winding mountain roads, then highways, then city streets that made his chest tight with anxiety. Sullivan Industries rose 30 stories into the gray Portland sky, all glass and steel and sharp edges. Luke parked his beat-up Ford F-150 in the underground garage, wedged between a Tesla and a BM. His truck looked like it belonged in a junkyard, not here. The lobby was marble and chrome with a chandelier that probably cost more than his cabin. A security guard in a crisp uniform looked him up and down, barely hiding his skepticism. "Can I help you?" Luke's throat felt dry. "Luke Brennan. I'm here to see Emma Sullivan." The guard checked his computer, eyebrows rising slightly. 14th floor. Elevator's on your right." The elevator was glass-walled, and Luke watched the city shrink beneath him as he rose. His reflection stared back. A man in an ill-fitting suit, looking like he was about to face a firing squad. The doors opened on the 14th floor. Emma stood waiting, and Luke's breath caught. She wore a sharp black suit that probably cost more than his truck. Her hair pulled back severely, minimal jewelry. Professional, powerful, a stranger. But when their eyes met, something softened in her expression. "Luke, you came." His voice came stiff. "I said I would." Emma's smile was small, careful. "Come with me." She led him through an open-plan office, rows of desks, people on phones and laptops, the hum of productivity. Everyone looked young, polished, confident. They glanced at Luke as he passed, and he felt their eyes cataloging his cheap suit, his rough hands, his obvious displacement. Emma stopped at a desk near the window. "This is yours." The desk was clean, organized, with a brand new laptop and dual monitors. A stack of files sat waiting. Through the window he could see the city spreading out below, mountains visible in the distance. Emma gestured to a group of 5 people approaching. "These are the team members you'll be working with." A young woman with sharp eyes and an expensive haircut extended her hand. "Sarah Chen, project manager. I handle the tech core account." Her handshake was firm, professional, and her eyes held polite skepticism. A thin man in his mid-20s nodded. "David Park, data analyst, MIT." The name drop felt intentional, a subtle marking of territory. A broader man with an easy smile. "Marcus Cole, operations. Heard you're from Montana. Beautiful country." At least one friendly face. A woman with dark eyes and elegant posture. Priya Sharma, UX design lead. Welcome to the team. And finally, a man who barely looked up from his phone. Chen Wei, lead engineer. Hey, Emma placed a hand on Luke's shoulder. Luke will be coordinating between teams, making sure projects stay on track and communication stays clear. Sarah's expression remained neutral. Looking forward to working with you. But her tone suggested otherwise. Emma handed Luke a thick folder. These are our current projects. Your primary focus will be coordinating the tech core infrastructure migration. It's a big client, $200,000 budget. Sarah will brief you on the details. Luke opened the folder and saw pages of technical jargon he didn't understand. Agile methodology, sprint planning, API integration, cloud architecture. The words blurred together. His voice came uncertain. I don't know how to do this. Emma's hand squeezed his shoulder. You'll learn. I believe in you, Luke. You just have to believe in yourself. She walked away to take a phone call, leaving Luke alone at his desk. He sat down slowly, staring at the laptop screen. He pressed the power button and waited. A login screen appeared. He didn't know the password. Sarah appeared beside him. Need help? Luke's face burned. I don't have the login information. Sarah reached across him, her perfume expensive and floral. She typed quickly. There, temporary password is new user 2024. You'll need to change it after first login. Luke typed it in. The computer opened to a desktop he didn't recognize. Multiple icons he'd never seen before. Sarah pointed. That's Asana, our project management tool. Slack for team communication. Google Workspace for documents and spreadsheets. Pretty standard stuff. Standard for her, alien for him. Sarah must have seen something in his face because her expression softened slightly. There are tutorial videos in the shared drive under new employee resources. Start there. Luke spent the first day watching tutorials. How to use Asana, how to read a Gantt chart, how to write professional emails, basic Excel functions. His head throbbed by noon. The break room at lunch was worse. Luke heated up the sandwich he'd packed, peanut butter and jelly, made that morning. Around him, people microwaved gourmet meals and discussed weekend plans at wine bars and hiking trips to Bend. Two men stood by the coffee maker, voices low but carrying. Did you hear Emma hired some random guy? Apparently, he's never worked in an office before. The other man laughed. Seriously? What is this, a charity program? Luke pretended not to hear. He ate his sandwich quickly and went back to his desk. By the end of the first week, Luke was exhausted. He stayed late every night, watching tutorials until his eyes burned. He took notes by hand because typing felt too slow. He read through project documentation, highlighting every term he didn't understand, then Googling them one by one. The whispers followed him everywhere. In the hallway, that's the guy Emma hired. Apparently, he fixed fences or something before this. In the bathroom, I had to explain pivot tables to him. Pivot tables, that's like day one stuff. Near the elevator, why is he even here? Luke kept his head down and worked. He arrived before everyone else and left after they had all gone home. The cleaning crew became familiar faces, nodding at him as they emptied trash cans around his desk at 10 p.m. Friday afternoon of the second week, Luke was staring at a spreadsheet when his computer pinged. An email from someone named Mark Hendricks, CFO. Subject line, meeting request. Luke clicked it open. Mr. Brennan, please stop by my office today at 4 p.m., 28th floor. Mark Hendricks. Luke's stomach tightened. He'd heard the name. Emma's second in command, the man who'd been with the company for 20 years. At 4 p.m., Luke took the elevator to the 28th floor. The hallways here were quieter, more exclusive. Corner offices with mahogany doors. Mark Hendricks' office was large, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The man behind the desk was in his early 50s, silver hair perfectly styled, sharp suit that screamed authority. He looked up as Luke entered. Mr. Brennan, sit. Luke sat in one of the leather chairs facing the desk. Mark leaned back, fingers steepled. How are you finding Sullivan Industries so far? Luke chose his words carefully. It's different from what I'm used to, but I'm learning. Mark's smile didn't reach his eyes. I'm sure you are. Emma speaks highly of you, says you're resourceful, determined. Luke waited. Mark continued. I worked with her father for 20 years. Thomas Sullivan built this company from nothing. It was his life's work, his legacy. Luke understood where this was going. Mark's voice hardened slightly. Emma is brilliant, but she's young. Sometimes she makes decisions based on emotion rather than business wants. Luke's jaw tightened. Are you saying hiring me was a mistake? Mark spread his hands. I'm saying the optics are complicated. A CEO hiring someone with no corporate experience, no relevant education, no background in our industry, it raises questions. Questions that affect stock prices, questions that make shareholders nervous. Luke stood. Then I'll quit. If my being here is damaging the company, Mark held up a hand. Sit down, Mr. Brennan. I'm not asking you to quit. I'm asking you to understand the stakes. Emma put her reputation on the line for you. If you fail, she fails. And if she fails, this company, her father's legacy, suffers. Luke sat back down slowly. Mark's voice softened infinitesimally. I don't want to see that happen. So prove me wrong. Prove you deserve to be here. Luke met his gaze. That's what I intend to do. Mark nodded. Good. Because 6 months from now, the board will vote on whether Emma's leadership is taking the company in the right direction. Your performance will be part of that evaluation. Luke left the office with his hands shaking. The pressure had just increased exponentially. This wasn't just about him anymore. Emma's job was on the line. That evening, Luke called Emma. She answered immediately. Luke, how was your first week? His voice came tight. I met with Mark Hendricks. Silence on the other end. Luke continued. He told me about the board vote, about how my performance affects your position. Emma's sigh carried through the phone. I was going to tell you. Luke cut her off. You should have told me from the beginning. I need to know what's really at stake here. Into Emma's voice turned fierce. The stake is you having a chance at a better life. That's what matters. Luke's frustration boiled over. And what about you? What happens to you if I fail? Emma's response came quiet. Then I fail. But I'd rather fail trying to help you than succeed by leaving you behind. Luke didn't know what to say to that. Emma's voice gentled. Luke, I believe in you. The board will see what I see. You just need time. They talked for another 10 minutes before Luke hung up. He sat in the dark cabin, looking at Lily asleep in her bed through the open doorway. He thought about Mark's words, about the weight of Emma's faith in him, about the whispers that followed him through the office. He thought about quitting, about going back to odd jobs and barely scraping by. It would be easier, less humiliating. But then he thought about Lily having heat through the winter, about her having new clothes and a full refrigerator, about giving her a chance at something better. Week 3 began with a new assignment. Sarah called him into a conference room Monday morning. On the screen was a project outline, Tech Core Infrastructure Migration, Phase 1. Sarah's presentation was crisp and professional. TechCore is one of our biggest clients. They're migrating their entire data infrastructure to cloud-based systems. We have a 3-week deadline to coordinate between engineering, operations, design, and quality assurance. Budget is $200,000. Any overrun comes out of our margin. Luke studied the timeline. What's my role? Sarah pulled up another slide. You coordinate, make sure engineering delivers on time. Make sure operations has the resources they need. Make sure design and QA stay aligned. Keep communication flowing. Keep problems from becoming disasters. Luke's mind raced. And if something goes wrong? Sarah's expression was unreadable. Then you fix it. That's the job. She handed him a thick binder. Everything you need to know is in here. Timeline, deliverables, team contacts, escalation protocols. Read it. Learn it. We start tomorrow. Luke spent the rest of Monday and all of Tuesday reading the binder. He made notes, drew charts, tried to understand how all the pieces fit together. It was like learning a new language, one he had 3 weeks to master. Wednesday morning, the project kicked off. Luke attended his first coordination meeting. 10 people around a conference table, laptops open, coffee cups everywhere. Chen Wei, the lead engineer, pulled up a technical diagram. We'll migrate their databases first, then application servers, then client interfaces. Full testing at each stage. David Park countered, that timeline is too aggressive. We need at least 2 days for database testing alone. Priya Sharma jumped in. If databases take 2 days, design review gets compressed. We can't deliver quality UI updates on a shortened timeline. Arguments erupted. Luke sat there trying to follow the rapid-fire technical discussion, feeling like he was underwater. Sarah looked at him. Luke, what do you think? Everyone turned to stare at him. His mind went blank. He forced himself to speak. Can we parallelize some of the work? Have designs start on UI while database testing is happening? Chenwei shook his head. Not possible. Design needs confirmed database architecture first. Luke tried again. What if we add more testing resources, bring in contractors to speed up the process? David Park frowned. That would blow the budget. The meeting continued for another hour. Luke contributed little, mostly taking notes and trying to understand. Afterwards, Sarah pulled him aside. You need to be more assertive. The team needs to see you as a leader, not an observer. Luke's frustration leaked through. I'm trying to learn how this works. I can't lead if I don't understand what I'm leading. Mita, Sarah's expression softened slightly. Then learn faster. We don't have time for a learning curve. Luke worked 18-hour days. He arrived at 6 a.m. and left at midnight. He read documentation until his eyes crossed. He watched technical tutorials on double speed. He made spreadsheets tracking every deliverable, every deadline, every potential bottleneck. By the end of week 1, he was exhausted. By the middle of week 2, he was running on coffee and desperation. And then the article hit. It was a Thursday morning. Luke arrived to find the office buzzing with unusual energy. People clustered around computers, voices low and urgent. Sarah approached his desk, her expression somewhere between sympathy and concern. Luke, you should see this. She handed him her tablet. The headline blazed across the screen. Billionaire CEO Emma Sullivan under fire for controversial hiring decision. Luke's stomach dropped. He scrolled through the article, each word like a punch. Emma Sullivan, 35-year-old CEO of Sullivan Industries, has raised eyebrows with her recent hiring of Luke Brennan, 37, a Montana man with no college degree and no corporate experience, as project coordinator with a starting salary of $60,000 per year. Sources inside the company report that Brennan requires extensive training on basic office software and has struggled to keep pace with more experienced colleagues. The decision comes at a time when Sullivan Industries faces increased competition and shareholder pressure to maintain growth. Questions arise about whether this hiring decision was based on merit or other factors. Neither Sullivan nor Brennan could be reached for comment. Luke felt like he'd been hit by a truck. His face burned. Around the office, people were reading the same article, glancing at him, whispering. His phone buzzed. A text from Emma. My office now. The elevator ride to the 20th floor felt like climbing to the gallows. Emma's office door was open. She stood at the window, shoulders tense. Luke's voice came rough. I'll resign. Today. Right now. Emma turned, and he was struck by how tired she looked. Dark circles under her eyes, makeup barely concealing the strain. No. Luke moved closer. I'm destroying your reputation. The company's reputation. Let me go and this all stops. Emma's expression hardened. I'm not firing you, Luke. His frustration exploded. Why not? Everyone thinks this was a mistake. Maybe they're right. Maybe you did make this decision based on emotion instead of business sense. Emma's voice cut like ice. You've been here 3 weeks. You've learned more in 3 weeks than most people learn in 3 months. You show up early. You stay late. You don't make excuses. That's exactly the kind of person I need. Luke gestured at nothing. But I don't belong here. Look at me. I'm a carpenter, a handyman. I fix fences and chop wood. I don't coordinate $200,000 projects. Emma moved closer, her voice fierce. Not yet, but you will. Luke wanted to argue, but something in her absolute certainty stopped him. Emma continued, Mark called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow. They're going to question my judgment. They're going to use you as evidence that I'm unfit to lead. Luke's chest tightened. So this is worse than I thought. Emma's smile was bitter. Much worse. The board is giving me an ultimatum. 6 months. If you don't deliver measurable results by then, they vote on my position as CEO. Luke sat down heavily. So I either succeed and save your dough, or I fail and destroy your career. Emma's hand came to rest on his shoulder. You're not going to fail. I won't let you. But Luke heard the fear beneath her confidence, and it terrified him. The next 2 weeks were a nightmare. The article spread across business blogs, tech news sites, even made a brief appearance on a cable news segment about corporate governance. Sullivan Industries stock dropped 8%. Shareholders demanded explanations. The whispers in the office became louder, less discreet. Luke pushed himself harder. Sleep became optional, 3-4 hours a night. He survived on coffee and granola bars. The TechCore project consumed every waking moment, but obstacles appeared everywhere. Luke submitted a budget request to Mark's office for additional testing resources. It sat on Mark's desk for 3 days before being returned with a note. Need more justification. Resubmit with detailed cost-benefit analysis. Luke rewrote the request, adding every detail he could think of. Another 2 days passed before approval came through, too late to bring on the contractors he'd wanted. A critical meeting with the engineering team got mysteriously double-booked. Chen Wei's team attended a mandatory all-hands called by Mark instead. Luke had to reschedule, losing another 2 days. Small delays, technical difficulties, communication breakdowns, each one explainable on its own. Together, they formed a pattern. Luke was working at his desk at 11 p.m. on a Wednesday when David Park stopped by. You should go home, man. Luke didn't look up from his spreadsheet. I need to finish this resource allocation. David sat on the edge of the desk. Look, I don't know if anyone's told you, but Mark has been asking around, wanting documentation of mistakes, building a case. Luke's hand stilled on the keyboard. What kind of case? David's voice dropped. The kind that proves Emma made a bad hire. I think he's trying to undermine you, to prove his point about her judgment. Luke looked up. Why are you telling me this? David shrugged. Because it's bullshit. Yeah, you're new. Yeah, you're learning. But you work harder than anyone else here. You show up. You don't quit. That should count for something. After David left, Luke sat in the empty office and felt rage building. He was being sabotaged, set up to fail, and Emma would pay the price. The TechCore project entered its final week with major components still incomplete. The database migration had taken longer than expected. Design review was compressed. Quality assurance was being rushed. Friday morning deadline day, Luke arrived at 5 a.m. The engineering team had worked through the night. Chen Wei looked exhausted. We're close. Testing results are coming back positive, but we need another 6 hours. Luke checked the timeline. Client presentation is at 2 p.m. Chen Wei's expression was grim. I know. Luke made a decision. Keep going. I'll handle the client. At 1:30 p.m., Luke stood outside the conference room where Emma and 3 TechCore executives waited. The project was 90% complete. Good, but not what had been promised. He could lie. Present partial results as complete. Buy time. Or he could tell the truth and accept the consequences. Luke took a breath and walked in. Emma's eyes found his immediately, reading his expression. Luke, he addressed the room. We're not quite finished. Engineering needs another 6 hours to complete final testing. I know that's not what we promised, but I'd rather deliver something right than something rushed. The TechCore CEO, a stern woman in her 50s, frowned. We paid for an on-time delivery. Luke met her gaze. You paid for a quality product. We can give you a completed project today that might have problems, or we can give you a perfected project tonight that will work flawlessly. Your choice. Silence stretched. Emma sat very still, her expression neutral. The TechCore CEO glanced at her team, then back at Luke. Tonight, but this better be worth it. After the executives left, Emma remained in the conference room. Luke waited for the anger, the disappointment. Instead, her voice came quiet. That took courage. Luke slumped into a chair. Or stupidity. I might have just cost us the client. Emma shook her head. No, you did the right thing. You prioritized quality over appearance. That's leadership. Luke's laugh came bitter. Mark is going to have a field day with this. Emma's smile was sharp. Let him. You made the right call. At 8 p.m., Chenwei sent the text. We're done. Everything's green. Luke called the Tech Core CEO personally. The project is complete. All testing passed. Can we deliver the presentation now? There was a pause. It's 8 at night. Luke's voice stayed steady. I know, but you deserve to see what you paid for. Another pause. Fine. Conference call in 20 minutes. Luke delivered the presentation over video conference. He walked through every component, every test result, every quality metric. The Tech Core team asked hard questions. Luke answered them, sometimes admitting he didn't know and promising to find out. At 9:30 p.m., the Tech Core CEO leaned back in her chair. This is excellent work, better than we expected, actually. Luke felt something loosen in his chest. Thank you. After the call ended, Luke sat alone in the conference room. His hands were shaking. He'd done it. The first major project, completed, successful, delivered. His phone buzzed. Emma. My office. Luke took the elevator to the 20th floor, exhaustion making his legs heavy. Emma stood at her desk, and when she looked at him, something in her expression made his breath catch. Her voice came soft. I just got off the phone with TechCore's CEO. She said this was the smoothest project launch they've had in years, that you were professional, honest, and delivered exceptional quality. Luke didn't know what to say. Emma walked around her desk. You did this, Luke. Not me. You. Luke's voice came rough. I almost failed. We were behind schedule, over budget on testing hours. If Chenwei's team hadn't pulled off that last push, Emma cut him off. But they did, because you coordinated them, because you made the hard calls, because you didn't take shortcuts. They stood there and something shifted between them. The professional distance that had existed since he'd started, the careful boundaries they'd maintained, cracked. Emma's next words came careful. I need to tell you something. About the board meeting. About what Mark is planning. Luke sat down. Tell me. Emma explained the politics. Mark's concerns about her youth and inexperience. The shareholders worried about the stock price. The board members who thought she was too emotional, too willing to take risks. She explained how Mark had been documenting every delay, every mistake, every piece of evidence that Luke was unqualified. Luke listened, anger building. He's been sabotaging me. Emma nodded. Subtly, nothing provable, just obstacles in your way. Luke's jaw clenched. Why didn't you tell me? Emma's voice carried weight. Because you had enough to worry about. And because I knew if you succeeded despite the obstacles, it would mean more than succeeding with a clear path. Luke understood the logic, but it didn't make it hurt less. What happens now? Emma met his gaze. Now we have 5 months to prove Mark wrong, to show the board that my decision to hire you was right, that you belong here. Luke stood, exhaustion and determination warring inside him. Then that's what we'll do. Emma smiled, and for the first time since he'd arrived, it reached her eyes. I know you will. Luke left her office and took the elevator down to the parking garage. His truck started reluctantly, engine coughing in the cold. He drove through the dark Portland streets, then onto the highway, then into the mountains. By the time he reached the cabin, it was past midnight. Lily was asleep, Mrs. Chen had left a note saying everything was fine. Luke collapsed onto the couch and stared at the ceiling. He thought about the project, about Mark's sabotage, about Emma's faith in him, about the 5 months stretching ahead. He thought about the whispers, the skepticism, the constant feeling of not belonging. And he thought about the TechCore CEO's words. This is excellent work. Slowly something settled inside him. Not confidence, not yet, but something close. The understanding that maybe, just maybe, he could do this. You can tell a lot about a person by how they handle having nothing. Some people break, some people build. Luke had spent his life building, cabins and fences and a life for his daughter from scraps and determination. This was just a different kind of building, different tools, different materials, but the same core skill, taking what you have and making something that works. He closed his eyes and let exhaustion take him. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, he'd proven something to himself. He could survive in Emma's world. Now he just had to learn to thrive. The months that followed the TechCore success became a rhythm Luke hadn't known was possible. He learned to read Chenwei's technical diagrams, to anticipate David Park's data concerns, to navigate Priya Sharma's design requirements. The jargon that had once been foreign slowly became familiar. Sprint planning, resource allocation, critical path analysis, words that meant something now. But success brought visibility, and visibility brought scrutiny. Mark Hendricks appeared at Luke's desk on a gray November morning, his presence commanding immediate attention from nearby employees. "Mr. Brennan, walk with me." They rode the elevator to the 28th floor in silence. Mark's corner office overlooked the Willamette River, rain streaking the windows. He gestured to a chair, and Luke sat, waiting. Mark's voice came measured. The TechCore project was well executed. "I'll give you that. But one success doesn't establish a pattern." Luke kept his expression neutral. "What would establish a pattern?" Mark leaned forward. "Consistency. 3 more projects like TechCore. No mistakes, no delays, no budget overruns." Luke understood the game. That's a higher bar than anyone else operates under. Mark's smile was thin. "Everyone else has credentials, experience, track record. You have Emma's faith. That's not enough for the board." Luke met his gaze directly. "Then I'll give them more than faith. I'll give them results." Mark's expression shifted, something almost like respect flickering across his features. "I hope you do, Mr. Brennan, for Emma's sake, if not your own." After Luke left, he stood in the hallway, hands clenched. The message was clear. Mark wasn't done building his case. Every project would be scrutinized, every mistake magnified. The target on Luke's back had just grown larger. December brought the second major project, a logistics overhaul for Cascade Manufacturing, a regional supplier with outdated systems and tight deadlines. Sarah assigned it during a Monday briefing, her expression carefully neutral. 4 teams, 6-week timeline, $300,000 budget. Clients notoriously difficult. Luke dove in. He created detailed coordination schedules, held daily check-ins, built redundancy into every timeline. He learned to anticipate problems before they materialize. If engineering needed server specs, he had them ready before they asked. If design needed stakeholder approval, he'd already scheduled the meeting. The work consumed him. He drove to Portland early Monday mornings and didn't return to the cabin until late Friday nights. Lily stayed with Mrs. Chen during the week. On weekends, Luke cooked meals he'd learned from Emma's recipes, helped Lily with homework, tried to be present. But part of his mind was always calculating timelines, tracking deliverables, planning for Monday. Lily noticed. One Saturday morning, she looked up from her cereal. "Do you like your new job?" Luke paused, considering. "It's challenging, but yes, I think I do." Lily's voice came small. "Do you like it more than being here with me?" Luke's heart clenched. He knelt beside her chair. "Nothing is more important than you. Nothing. This job, it's so you can have a better life, so you don't have to worry about being cold or hungry." Lily wrapped her arms around his neck. "I know, Daddy. I just miss you sometimes." Luke held her tight. "I miss you too, sweetheart. Every day." The Cascade project hit a major snag in week 4. The client's legacy systems were more complicated than initial assessments had shown. Data migration that should have taken 3 days stretched to 7. The timeline started compressing dangerously. Luke called an emergency meeting. 10 people crammed into a conference room, tension thick. "We're behind schedule and client presentation is in 2 weeks. I need solutions." Chenwei pulled up technical diagrams. "We can accelerate database conversion, but we'd need to bring in 2 additional engineers. That's 30,000 over budget." Marcus Cole countered. "Or we reduce testing cycles, save time, stay on budget." Luke's decision came quick. "No reduced testing. We bring in the engineers. I'd rather go over budget than deliver something that breaks." David Park frowned. "Mark has to approve any budgeting increases. He'll want detailed justification." Luke nodded. "Then I'll give him detailed justification." He spent that evening preparing a 30-page cost-benefit analysis, documenting every risk of reduced testing versus the value of additional resources. He submitted it to Mark's office at midnight. 3 days passed with no response. Luke emailed Mark's assistant, "I need approval by end of business today or we miss the contractor window." The assistant replied, "Mr. Hendricks is reviewing. He'll respond when he's ready." At 4:30 p.m., Luke went to Mark's office uninvited. The secretary tried to stop him. "He's in a meeting." Luke walked past her and knocked on Mark's door, opened it without waiting. Mark looked up from a conference call, surprise flickering across his face. "Mr. Brennan, I'm in the middle of—" Luke's voice came firm. "I need that budget approval now. We lose the contractors in 30 minutes. Mark stared at him for a long moment, then muted his call. "This is highly irregular." Luke didn't back down. "So is letting a $300,000 project fail because of bureaucracy. I've given you every piece of justification you asked for. Either approve it or tell me no, so I can find another solution." Something shifted in Mark's expression. He unmuted his call. "Gentlemen, I need 5 minutes. I'll call you back." After they hung up, Mark turned to Luke. "You're learning to fight. Good. You'll need that." He pulled up the budget request on his computer, scanned it, then signed electronically. "Approved. Don't make me regret this." Luke left the office, heart pounding. He'd just confronted the CFO in his own office, interrupted a meeting, demanded action. 6 months ago, that would have been unthinkable. Now it felt necessary. The contractors came on board. The data migration accelerated. By week 6, the project was complete, on time, slightly over budget, but delivering everything promised. The Cascade Manufacturing CEO was a gruff man in his 60s who didn't hand out compliments easily. "This is solid work, Brennan. You kept your team organized and delivered quality. That's rare." After the call, Luke sat at his desk and felt something new. Pride. Not just relief that it was done, but genuine pride in the work itself. Emma appeared at his desk, rare for her to come to the 14th floor. "Nice job on Cascade." Luke glanced up. "Thank you." Emma's voice dropped lower. "Mark told me about the budget confrontation. That took guts." Luke's smile was wry. "Or stupidity. I'm still not sure which." Emma's expression turned serious. "We need to talk. My office. Tonight, after everyone leaves." Luke waited until the office emptied, then took the elevator to the 20th floor. Emma stood at her window, shoulders tense. She turned as he entered. "The board meeting is in 3 months. Mark has been persistent in his concerns." Luke sat down. "What's he saying?" Emma moved to her desk. "That you've done well on 2 projects but haven't proven long-term viability. That the budget overrun on Cascade shows you can't manage resources effectively. That my judgment is still questionable." Luke's jaw tightened. "So 2 successes aren't enough." Emma's voice carried exhaustion. "For some members of the board, no amount of success will be enough. They made up their minds about you before you started." Luke studied her face, the dark circles under her eyes, the tension around her mouth. She'd been carrying this weight alone. "What do you need from me?" Emma met his gaze. 3 more perfect projects, no overruns, no delays, results that can't be argued with. Luke leaned back. "And if I deliver that?" Emma's smile was tight. "Then maybe we change enough minds to keep my position." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Emma's voice came softer. "I'm sorry for dragging you into this political mess. You've proven yourself 10 times over, and it's still not enough." Luke's response came quick. "Don't apologize. You gave me a chance when no one else would. I'm not going to let that be for nothing." Something passed between them, an understanding deeper than words. They weren't just CEO and employee anymore. They were 2 people fighting the same battle. Emma stood and walked to the window. "There's something else. The board wants to meet you. Face to face, they want to evaluate you themselves." Luke's stomach dropped. "When?" Emma's voice came quiet. "Next month, before they make their final decision." Luke drove home through winter rain, his mind racing. Meeting the board meant being judged by 12 people who already doubted him. People with decades of business experience, Ivy League educations, wealth beyond imagining. And he'd have to convince them he belonged. January brought bitter cold in the 3rd major project, a complete system integration for Portland Medical Center, the largest hospital network in Oregon. The stakes were massive: $400,000 budget, 8-week timeline, lives potentially depending on the technology working flawlessly. Sarah briefed him with unusual gravity. This is the big one, Luke. Healthcare systems don't forgive mistakes. One error and people could die. Luke felt the weight of it. Then we don't make errors. He assembled the team and laid out expectations. Triple check everything. Question every assumption. If you see a potential problem, raise it immediately. Pride doesn't matter here, only accuracy. The team responded. Chen Wei's engineering group ran simulations obsessively. David Park's analysis caught 3 potential data vulnerabilities in the first week. Priya's design team consulted with actual nurses and doctors to ensure interfaces were intuitive under pressure. Luke coordinated it all, tracking hundreds of moving pieces, anticipating conflicts, solving problems before they cascaded. He'd learned to read people, to see when Chen Wei's silence meant he was worried, when David's rapid-fire questions meant he'd found something critical, when Priya's carefully neutral tone meant she disagreed but wouldn't say so directly. Week 5 brought a crisis. The hospital's legacy patient record system used an obsolete format that modern software couldn't directly read. Converting 17 years of patient data would take 3 additional weeks, time they didn't have. Luke called a midnight meeting. The team gathered, exhausted and stressed. We need creative solutions. Impossible isn't acceptable here. Chen Wei rubbed his eyes. We could write custom conversion scripts, but that's weeks of coding and testing. Marcus Cole suggested. Or we could migrate in phases, keep the old system running while we gradually move records over. David Park shook his head. That creates security vulnerabilities. Medical data requires complete system integrity. They argued for an hour. Luke listened, processing, thinking. Then he saw it. What if we parallelize the conversion? Split the 17 years into segments. Assign different engineers to different time periods. Run conversions simultaneously. Chen Wei looked thoughtful. That could work, but we'd need 8 engineers instead of 3. Luke pulled out his calculator, running numbers. 50,000 over budget, but we stay on timeline and maintain data integrity. He submitted the budget increase request to Mark with a detailed explanation of why patient safety justified the cost. Mark approved it within 12 hours, attaching a note. Don't make me regret this twice. The parallel conversion worked. 8 engineers transformed 17 years of data in 10 days. The system integration proceeded on schedule. During week 7, Luke was reviewing test results and at 2 a.m. when his desk phone rang. The hospital's IT director, panic in his voice. We've got a problem. The new system is crashing during peak load. If this happens during go-live, the ER could lose access to patient records. Luke's mind raced. When did this start? The director provided details. Luke pulled up system logs, analyzed load patterns, called Chen Wei despite the hour. We've got a critical issue. I'm sending you logs now. They spent the next 4 hours diagnosing the problem. A memory leak in the interface code that only appeared under specific high-load conditions. Chen Wei and 2 other engineers worked through the night rewriting the problematic modules. By 8 a.m., they had a fix. By noon, testing confirmed it worked. The system went live on schedule. Luke stood in the hospital's command center watching screens light up with the new system. Nurses accessed patient records seamlessly. Doctors pulled up test results without delay. The ER operated smoothly through a rush of morning traumas. The hospital's CEO, a sharp-eyed woman named Dr. Patricia Morrison, approached Luke. Your team caught that memory leak before it could cause real damage. That kind of diligence saves lives. Luke felt the weight of those words. This wasn't just about proving himself or helping Emma. Real people, sick people, injured people depended on this system working, and it did. Back at Sullivan Industries, news of the hospital project's success spread quickly. The whispers that had followed Luke for months began to shift. Not gone, but different. Less skeptical, more curious. Sarah stopped by his desk. Nice work on Portland Medical. That was complex coordination. Luke looked up, surprised by the genuine respect in her tone. Thank you. Couldn't have done it without the team. Sarah's smile was small but real. You're learning when to push and when to support. That's harder than it looks. February arrived with freezing rain and the board meeting looming. Emma called Luke to her office on a Monday afternoon. Her expression was unreadable. The board wants to meet you next Friday, 3 p.m., 28th floor conference room. Luke's hands went clammy. What should I expect? Emma sat across from him. 12 board members. They'll ask about your background, your experience, why you think you are qualified. Some will be hostile. Some will be genuinely curious. Mark will be looking for any weakness to exploit. Us absorb this. And what do I say? Emma's gaze was steady. The truth. Tell them about your life, about Lily, about what you've learned, about the projects you've delivered. Don't try to be someone you're not. That's when people see through you. Luke spent the week preparing. He reviewed every project, every decision, every outcome. He practiced answering hard questions. He bought a new suit. Not thrift store this time, but not expensive either. Something that fit properly. Something that felt like armor. Friday arrived too quickly. Luke stood outside the conference room at 2:58 p.m., hard hammering. Through the glass walls, he could see 12 people taking seats around a massive table. Emma sat at the head. Mark sat to her right, expression carefully neutral. Luke took a breath and walked in. Emma gestured to an empty chair at the opposite end. Everyone, this is Luke Brennan. Luke, the board. 12 faces turned toward him, some curious, some skeptical, some openly hostile. An older man with silver hair spoke first. Robert Chen, chairman of the board. Mr. Brennan, thank you for joining us. We've heard quite a bit about you, some positive, some concerning. We'd like to hear your perspective. Luke's voice came steadier than he felt. What would you like to know? A woman in her 60s, Jennifer Torres, leaned forward. Let's start with basics. You have no college degree, no corporate experience. What makes you think you're qualified to coordinate major projects for a company of our scale? Luke met her gaze. I have 17 years of experience solving complex problems with limited resources. I've managed budgets, coordinated teams, delivered results under pressure. The context was different, but the core skills are the same. Mark spoke up. The context was different. You were fixing fences and chopping wood. That's hardly equivalent to managing $400,000 technology projects. Luke turned to Mark. When I repaired a fence, I had to assess the damage, determine what materials I needed, stay within budget, and deliver a result that would last through Montana winters. When I coordinated the Portland medical project, I assessed system requirements, determined what resources we needed, managed the budget, and delivered a result that had to work flawlessly under pressure. The tools were different. The thinking was the same. Another board member, Thomas Liang, jumped in. But you've gone over budget on multiple projects. That suggests poor resource management. Luke didn't flinch. I've gone over budget when the alternative was delivering inferior quality or risking failure. On Cascade, spending $30,000 extra meant we delivered a working system instead of one that crashed. On Portland Medical, spending $50,000 extra meant patient records stayed secure and accessible. I prioritize outcomes over optics. The questions continued for an hour. They probed his education, his decision-making, his relationships with the team. They asked about specific projects, specific choices, specific outcomes. Luke answered honestly, defending his decisions without apology, acknowledging mistakes without making excuses. Finally, Robert Chen raised a hand for silence. Mr. Brennan, I have one final question. Why should we trust Emma's judgment about you? What do you bring to this company that justifies the controversy your hiring has caused? Luke took a moment before answering. I bring the perspective of someone who's had nothing and built something from it. I bring the work ethic of someone who knows what it's like to choose between electricity and groceries. I bring the judgment of someone who understands that credentials don't guarantee competence, but results do. And I bring the determination of a father who wants his daughter to have better opportunities than he did. He paused, then continued. As for Emma's judgment, she saw potential where others saw only deficits. She gave someone a chance when it would have been easier not to. That's the kind of leadership that builds great companies. Companies that value what people can become, not just what they've already been. The strongest walls we build aren't made of stone. They're made of fear. And the only way to tear them down is to let someone in. Silence filled the room. Then Robert Chen nodded. Thank you, Mr. Brennan. That will be all. Luke stood, shook hands around the table and left. His shirt was soaked with sweat under his suit jacket. He made it to the men's room and leaned against the sink, breathing hard. He didn't know if he'd succeeded or failed, but he'd told the truth. That would have to be enough. Emma found him in his office an hour later. That was remarkable. Luke looked up. I have no idea if it was enough. Emma sat on the edge of his desk. Robert Chen called me after you left. He said you were the most honest person he'd heard speak in that room in 20 years. That you reminded him why he got into business in the first place. Luke felt something loosen in his chest. What about Mark? Emma's smile turned wry. Mark admitted you handled yourself well. High praise from him. Luke leaned back. So what happens now? Emma's expression grew serious. Now we wait. The board votes in 6 weeks. In the meantime, you keep doing what you've been doing, delivering results, proving them right. The next 6 weeks were the most intense of Luke's life. He coordinated 2 more major projects, a supply chain optimization for a retail client and a cybersecurity upgrade for a financial services firm. Both came in on time and under budget. Both received glowing reviews from clients. The office dynamics shifted noticeably. People who had whispered about him now sought his advice. Sarah asked him to mentor a new coordinator. Chen Wei invited him to engineering team lunches. Even David Park grudgingly admitted he'd learned things from Luke's approach. But the waiting was agonizing. Luke drove to the cabin every weekend and tried to be present with Lily, but his mind kept circling back to the board vote. His entire future, Emma's future, hung on the decision of 12 people he'd met once. Lily noticed his distraction one Saturday morning. Daddy, you're worried about work again. Luke set down his coffee. I'm sorry, sweetheart. There's a big decision coming up. It's hard not to think about it. Lily climbed into his lap. Will we be okay, no matter what happens? Luke held her tight. We'll be okay, I promise. And he meant it, because even if the board voted against Emma, even if he lost his job, they wouldn't go back to freezing in the dark and eating stale bread. He'd saved money. He'd gained experience. He'd proven, at least to himself, that he could do this work. The board meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday in late March. Emma called Luke the night before. Tomorrow, 3 p.m., they'll vote, then announce their decision immediately after. Luke's voice came tight. Will I be there? Emma paused. They want you present for the announcement, whatever it is. Luke barely slept that night. He drove to Portland through pre-dawn darkness, arrived at the office before 6 a.m., tried to work but couldn't focus. The hours crawled. At 2:30 p.m., Emma appeared at his desk. It's time. They rode the elevator to the 28th floor in silence. The conference room was packed, all 12 board members, plus senior executives Luke didn't recognize. He and Emma sat together at one end of the table. Robert Chen called the meeting to order. We're here to vote on the leadership review, specifically whether Emma Sullivan's judgment and decision-making serve the best interests of Sullivan Industries and its shareholders. Luke's hands clenched under the table. Robert continued, the key evidence under review has been Emma's decision to hire Luke Brennan, a controversial choice that has sparked significant discussion both internally and in the media. We've evaluated Mr. Brennan's performance over the past 6 months. We've reviewed project outcomes, client feedback, and team assessments, and we've heard from Mr. Brennan himself. The room was silent. Robert looked around the table. Before we vote, does anyone wish to speak? Mark Hendricks raised his hand. I'd like to say something. Luke's stomach dropped. Mark stood. 6 months ago, I thought Emma made a mistake. I thought hiring Luke Brennan was an emotional decision that put the company at risk. I documented every delay, every budget overrun, every piece of evidence that he wasn't qualified. He paused, and Luke braced for the blow. Mark's voice changed. I was wrong. Shock rippled through the room. Mark continued. Luke Brennan has delivered 6 major projects in 6 months. 5 came in on time and under budget. The 6th went over budget to ensure quality and safety. Client satisfaction scores for his projects average 93%. Team members report that he's improved communication and coordination across departments. And he's done all of this while learning an entirely new industry from scratch. Mark looked directly at Luke. I opposed your hiring because I thought credentials mattered more than character. I was protecting what I thought the company needed. But Emma saw something I didn't. She saw potential, determination, and integrity. Those can't be taught in business school. You either have them or you don't. He turned back to the board. Emma's judgment was sound, better than sound. She took a risk on someone who deserved a chance, and that person has exceeded every reasonable expectation. That's exactly the kind of leadership this company needs. Mark sat down. Luke couldn't breathe. Robert Chen nodded. Thank you, Mark. Anyone else? Silence. Robert's voice carried weight. Then let's vote. All in favor of affirming Emma Sullivan's continued leadership as CEO of Sullivan Industries? 12 hands rose. Every single one. Robert smiled. The motion carries unanimously. Emma, your position is secure. And Mr. Brennan, congratulations. You've earned your place here. The room erupted in applause. Emma's hand found Luke's under the table, squeezing tight. She was trembling. After the meeting, after the congratulations and handshakes, Emma and Luke found themselves alone in her office. She stood at the window, looking out at the city. Her voice came soft. Thank you for fighting, for not giving up when it would have been easier. Luke joined her at the window. Thank you for believing in me when no one else did. They stood in silence, and something unspoken shifted between them. The professional boundaries that had held for months felt suddenly fragile. Emma turned to face him. Luke, I need to tell you something. Something I should have said a long time ago. Luke's heart raced. What? Emma's voice trembled slightly. When I was in your cabin, I wasn't just pretending to be someone else. I was being the most honest version of myself I'd been in years. And the person I was with you, the way I felt, that was real. Luke's throat tightened. Emma, she continued, I know this is complicated. I'm your boss. There are rules, policies, power dynamics, but I can't keep pretending I don't feel this. Luke took a breath. I've been afraid to say anything. Afraid it would seem like I was trying to leverage our professional relationship. Afraid you'd think I only cared because of what you could do for me. Emma's eyes held his. And do you only care because of what I can do for you? Luke's response came without hesitation. I care because you saw me when I was invisible. Because you treated my daughter with kindness when you had no reason to. Because you fight for what's right even when it costs you. The CEO part, that's just what you do. It's not who you are. Emma's breath caught. Who am I then? Luke moved closer. You're the woman who made bread from nothing, who read fairy tales to a 7-year-old, who risked her career for someone she barely knew. That's who you are. The distance between them evaporated. Emma reached up and pulled him into a kiss. Tender, desperate, full of months of restraint breaking at once. When they finally pulled apart, Emma's eyes were bright. We should talk about the policy implications. Luke cut her off with another kiss. Later. Right now, I just want this. They stayed in her office long after everyone else had gone home, talking quietly, stealing kisses, planning a future that had suddenly become possible. Luke drove back to the cabin that night with his heart full. He'd proven himself. Emma was safe. And somehow, impossibly, he'd found something he thought he'd lost forever. The courage to love again. When he walked through the cabin door, Lily looked up from her homework. Did something good happen? You look happy. Luke scooped her up. Something very good happened, and I have you to thank for it. Ooh, Lily squeezed his neck. What did I do? Luke's voice came thick with emotion. You reminded me that being brave sometimes means opening doors even when you're afraid. 18 months later, Luke stood in front of Sullivan Industries on a crisp October morning. He wore a tailored suit that fit perfectly, carried a leather briefcase, held a coffee from the shop downstairs. He was director of operations now, overseeing 12 teams and managing multi-million-dollar budgets. Emma walked up beside him, her own coffee in hand. Ready for another day? Luke smiled. Always. They'd been married for 6 months, a small ceremony at the cabin with Lily as flower girl and Mrs. Chen crying in the front row. Emmy had moved into the cabin and together they'd renovated it, adding a second floor, expanding the kitchen, filling it with warmth and light. Lily was 9 now, thriving in a good school, already talking about becoming an engineer like Chen Wei. She called Emma mom without hesitation, and Emma's eyes still got misty every time she heard it. They walked into the building together side by side. Employees greeted them warmly. The whispers were long gone, replaced by respect earned through 2 years of consistent results. In the elevator, Emma took Luke's hand. You know what today is? Luke thought for a moment. Tuesday? Emma laughed. It's 3 years to the day since I showed up at your cabin in a snowstorm. Luke pulled her close. Best night of my life, even if I was terrified at the time. Emma's voice turned thoughtful. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't opened that door? Luke considered it. You probably would have died and I would have spent the rest of my life wondering what might have been. Emma looked up at him. I wasn't there by accident, you know. I chose that route. I chose to go alone. Part of me was looking for something. I just didn't know what until I found it. Yeah, Luke understood. And what did you find? Emma's smile was soft. Home, not a place, not a position or a company, just home. The elevator doors opened on the 20th floor. Before they stepped out, Luke said, I learned something in that cabin too. That home isn't about where you are or what you have. It's about the people who believe in you when you can't believe in yourself. The people who see your potential and give you room to reach it. Emma's eyes glistened. That's quote-worthy. You should use it in your speech next week. Luke groaned. Don't remind me. Public speaking still terrifies me. Emma laughed. You face down a hostile board. You can handle a conference keynote. They walked to Emma's office together. On her desk was a framed photo. Luke, Emma, and Lily at the cabin, snow falling gently around them, all three laughing at something just outside the frame. Luke picked it up, studying it. You know what amazes me? 3 years ago, I had nothing. Now I have everything that matters. Emma came to stand beside him. You always had what mattered. You just needed the chance to show it. Luke set the photo down and pulled her into an embrace. Thank you for taking that chance, for opening your door when I opened mine. Emma's voice came muffled against his chest. We saved each other. That's how the best partnerships work. They stood there for a long moment, the city spread out below them, the future bright and certain. Luke thought about that night 3 years ago, the knock on the door, the choice between fear and compassion, the woman half frozen in the snow who would change his life forever. He thought about Mark's eventual friendship, about the board's unanimous vote, about the moment Lily first called Emma mom. He thought about every obstacle overcome, every doubt conquered, every wall torn down. And he realized something profound. Home was the people who believed in you when you couldn't believe in yourself. Home was the family you built from nothing. Home was opening the door even when you were afraid. Because sometimes the person standing in the snow wasn't there to take something from you. Sometimes they were there to save you, and sometimes you saved each other. Luke released Emma and they moved to their respective days, meetings and projects in the endless demands of a growing company. But they carried with them the knowledge that no matter what challenges came, they would face them together. In the evening, Luke would drive back to the cabin. Lily would run out to meet him, homework and stories tumbling from her lips. Emma would arrive an hour later, and they'd cook dinner together. All three of them crowded in the kitchen that was finally warm and bright. And sometimes, late at night, Luke would stand at the window and look out at the snow-covered pines. He'd remember being alone, afraid, convinced that opening his door was the most dangerous thing he could do. He'd been wrong. Keeping it closed would have been far more dangerous. Because behind that door was everything he'd been searching for without knowing it. Behind that door was home.